It was the darkest of times. The golden age of men and elves was over. A shadow like a cloud covered the land, and Middle-earth faced the greatest of evils. It sounds like fiction. Dark lords, evil empires, unheeded warnings, epic battles. But is it? That's the question we'll cover on today's edition of 5 Minutes for Freedom. The Dark Lord had been banished. It had taken everything Gandalf had and nearly all his friends to do the deed. The delay had almost spelled disaster, putting the entire dwarf expedition into peril, but the purveyor of evil had been vanquished and driven to a dark corner of Middle-earth from whence he could no longer harm the kingdoms of elves and men. Or so they thought. In the darkness, in the night, beneath the listless eyes of peace and safety, the Dark Lord regained his grip on Middle-earth. With insidious intrigue and deception, Saruman placed hand-picked spies, agents and saboteurs throughout the kingdoms. When the time was right, he made his move, nearly crushing the whole of Middle-earth under the weight of his darkness. The one saving grace was the handful of courageous patriots who risked all to save Middle-earth from obliteration. Through loyalty, faith, and sheer determination, this few overcame impossible odds to stand victorious and free. But it was just a story, right? For many of us, Tolkien's classic, Lord of the Rings, wove an unforgettable tale that we enjoyed for a few hours, then mindlessly placed back on the shelf. The rattle of sabers and the cries of battle echoed for moments in our minds, then faded to mist. Before long, we'd slid the epic tale into our mental storage box and went on our merry ways. But the tale would not be forgotten. The truth is, the story carved an epic swath through our imaginations because Tolkien drew deeply from the annals of history. He called on the struggles of Central Europe for his inspiration, and the dangers he spelled out in fantastic detail were shadows of the very real threats that had marched and murdered their way across the continent. Many who held the first-run copies in their hands could still see the smoke, smell the charred flesh, and hear the terrified screams in the vivid galleries of their memories. We'd fought the danger off. We'd shoved it into a dark corner. We crushed our foes and cheered our allies. We trundled our weapons into their chests and dusted off our hands. We marched into our golden years of freedom, gazing on with the listless eyes of peace and safety. And beneath our noses, the darkness spread, deepening the shadows and dimming the light. Some saw the danger, but were laughed to derision. Senator McCarthy, General MacArthur, President Reagan, their fingers pointed to the heart of the danger, but unbelieving eyes rolled and scorning lips scoffed. To Reagan's declaration that an evil empire was assailing us, the agents and saboteurs retorted, "Better red than dead." In his book, Disinformation, General Mihai Pacepa, former chief of propaganda in the Romanian version of the KGB, outlined his involvement in the willful and intentional assault on truth and morality in the West. His propaganda machine, launched as a united effort in the former Soviet Union bloc powers, was so effective that it continues chugging away in the background long after its engineers ceased to exist. Taking advantage of Allied relationships forged during World War II, the Soviet Union worked insidiously to recruit and insert their agents into key education, entertainment, and media positions throughout Europe and the US. The West was being overrun by the forces of Mordor, but we hardly even noticed. From those positions, they were able to manipulate public opinion in dramatic ways. According to General Pacepa, the machine was able to shift public opinion against the Vietnam War. It was able to shame Senator McCarthy into impotence, win public favor for communist sympathizers, and even convince the public that Nazism and fascism were right-wing extremes rather than left-wing factions branching from the roots of Marxism. Now this machine, though no longer funded and supported by the regime that built it, has infiltrated and undermined the highest levels of our national leadership and perpetrated acts that are nothing short of treason. Benghazi, Ferguson, the email leaks, lethal attacks on U.S. citizens without due process, collusion in support of enemies of America, spying on opposition political candidates, direct attacks on citizens' rights to free speech and freedom of religion, and now even inciting riots and revolution. All these activities represent a mutinous disregard for constitutional law and the people that the Constitution protects. In 1649, an event occurred that was utterly unprecedented in the history of mankind. King Charles I was executed for high treason against the people of the English Empire. To that point in history, treason was a charge of offense against the king. No one imagined that treason could be committed by the king. But when the idea struck, it stuck. Citizens realized that no man was above the law. There was a code of duty and right that transcended every office. The king was a servant of the people, tasked with protecting the citizens, and though he may be appointed to the seat by God, he must answer to his subjects for betraying the duties of his office. A king could commit treason. Today, our leaders hold vastly less authority than did the kings of old, yet they're just as brazen in their dereliction of duty as any indigent king ever was. As they rule for their own gain, they have sold us, like sheep for the slaughter, into the very jaws of the Marxist wolves that have lusted for our bountiful flesh for 100 years. Heedless of the oceans of blood shed by communist hands during the last century, they have invited that destruction to our own soil, selling innocent lives for their own profit. Our leaders have, indeed, committed treason against us. So what should be done about it? Now, I don't call for revolution, though in time that last fatal option may be forced upon us. We need but glance at the revolutions of history to see that in nearly all cases, the results have been devastating. Nor should we sit idly by. Doing nothing makes us party to the oppression we abhor. There is, however, a third path to take, a much wiser course. That is, to take the lessons of General Pacepa and turn the weapons of Marxism against them. These weapons include recruiting, infiltrating, framing, education, and broadcasting. Each of these separate tools offers a powerful but quiet way to strengthen the cause of patriotism. The Bible notes, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? The answer? Rebuild the foundations. And these tools are the road to rebuilding those foundations. Rather than the lies that the Marxists push with these weapons, we can use the power of truth to vastly magnify the power and potency of our efforts. Lies always show their hands in the end, leaving the entire edifice to fall like a house of cards. Truth, however, stands firm, because nothing can assail it. It shows all else for the lies that they are. I will be delving into each of these weapons named previously in more detail as I roll out future episodes. In the meantime, however, I encourage you to download and read Disinformation. I'll provide a link down below where you can search for it and get your own copy. It'll be very eye-opening. Now, please check out our other shows here on YouTube and check out our website, Blackbird Brigade, for news, articles, and updates. And I'll be adding a valuable resource area that you can access for free, so please sign on for those updates. And as always, please like, subscribe, and share. And if you're on Parler, please echo this like crazy. So, until next time.